Good afternoon, traders, and welcome to this week's weekly market analysis class, Monday the 7th of May. Before we get started, as always, please understand that any advice in today's session is of a general nature only and that your personal circumstances have not been taken into consideration. Okay, let me bring forward what is on our agenda for this week. We'll have a bit of a chat about what's happened last week. If you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to ask them and I'll do my best to address them for you. All right, so last week, the major talking point of last week was, of course, non-farm payroll towards the end of the week, and the job numbers initially disappointed, coming in at 164,000. Also, the average hourly earnings was down, missed the mark, but for the first time, unemployment fell below 4% in the US for 17 years, coming in at 3.9% from memory. And I guess initially, US dollar was anti-US dollar reaction from investors, but that didn't take long for it to filter through, and then basically it went back to pro-US dollars. At the end of it all, it pretty much finished very, very close to where it all started. So the net result was much of a nothing, but it did go for a bit of a roller coaster ride. This week, we have on the US agenda, CPI numbers, inflation numbers is the key. That happens on Thursday, and at this stage, most analysts believe that if they can maintain that at 2%, then it will be pro-US news. The other events that are happening is the Fed Chair Powell will be speaking. He's speaking in Zurich. And also PPI numbers on Wednesday, plus crude oil inventories. So not a great deal on the agenda this week for the US. The primary one will be the inflation numbers on Thursday. If we move along and let's focus on the pound for a moment. This week we have, let's talk about last week first of all. We had three major PMI data releases. We had services, manufacturing, and retail. So they all pretty much missed the mark. So one of them was okay, but the other two were not great, and it just further puts a fuel on the sterling that has been delivering poor data of recent time. Now this week is what we call Super Thursday, with a rate decision and the inflation report due out simultaneously. So you can see there that what I'm highlighting, essentially we have the monetary policy statement, the interest rate decision, and the inflation report all coming out at the same time. This month, the month of May, was supposed to be when the Bank of England hiked their interest rates, but now after the recent poll data that has been released, it seems that perhaps the Bank of England may have been getting ahead of itself, and now that rate expectation is one of no change. So we've gone from 4 weeks ago, the expectation that we were going to increase rates this week, but now that's disappeared and it's off the table. Now, what will be interesting will be how the vote goes to see if everybody's unanimous on whatever decision they come up with. And also, what message will Carney give? Has the economy worsened and therefore don't expect any interest rates this year? Or is this just a temporary setback and we may resume and the opportunity to raise rates again in the coming months? So that's what we need to look out for in that statement, and let's see what is actually delivered. So that's for the pound. Let's focus to the next central bank, which will be producing or delivering a monetary policy statement, and that's New Zealand. There is no expectation of any interest rate changes in New Zealand. The other things to note is that recent job reports were good, and RBNZ sees them as positive as they're keeping a low unemployment rate. Now, what we're keen to see here is how they word their statement. Well, as we already said, we don't expect them to increase or decrease rates, so we're We expect them to remain unchanged, but let's see what they say in their statement, particularly to job growth and their inflation figures, if that gives us any indication as to any further moves towards the end of the year. So that's from New Zealand. Finally, locally, we don't have much on our agenda. We have retail sales tomorrow, and we have the annual budget release. Now, the annual budget release is really, it doesn't have a major impact usually on our currency, but nevertheless, it is something significant that is due out tomorrow evening as well. That pretty much wraps up everything in terms of the major data that we have. The only other one of significance is for any Canadian dollar traders on Friday. I forgot to highlight that one, but that one is down here, which is the unemployment rate and the job changes for Canada. So that's on Friday evening. I think due to the data releases that are on our calendar for this week, the currency that's probably going to be the most susceptible to data movement will be the GBP USD. So if you trade that one, keep an alert of when these things are due out for us. As always, guys, these times that I'm showing you, they're in my local time, which is Australian Eastern Standard Daylight Savings Time. Okay, let me bring my charts forward. Let's get cracking. If you do have questions, once again, I invite you to type them in now as we go through and analyze the majors for this week. Okay, let's kick off with the Aussie dollar. Now, I have this chart. Notice that I've still kept my lines, my parallel lines on it, and we were looking for some kind of a trade over here to see if we got an opportunity to become buyers, and I didn't get it. I didn't get a setup that I was looking for. Consequently, it kept on going down. So it hasn't hurt us because nothing has actually happened. The point being is that now this parallelogram or this channel, falling channel, doesn't really work anymore. So let me just get rid of it. And let me zoom out a little bit. I just want to take a more distant view. If I was to draw a line across the bottom here, as such, let me zoom in now. Oh, I think I've gone too far through it to utilize it. If these areas here were only the wicks that have gone through that line, I would have been happier about it, but they're not. So I'm not really going to use this as a double bottom either. Okay, so I'm not looking to try and trade off this line. So that's because I feel that I've gone a bit too far through. Okay, so let's get rid of that and let's get rid of that line. And zoom out again. Let's see if I can see something else. Okay, nothing on my radar. The only thing that I would be willing to trade is if the market pulled up here, and I'm really looking for it around about the 76.50 level. I'd like to see it rise up to around about the 76.50 level and then try and hit some kind of price action in a downward direction. So in other words, what I'm saying is if I get the price action of these two candles here, I'm not ready to take that one, not yet. So I'd prefer it to get up higher, close to that, around about 76.50, and then I'd be a bit more comfortable with that type of trade. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw in a line across here, and I'm going to leave it here, and let's see if this line resistance level comes into play for an opportunity for us. Now, it may all happen. That's around about the level that I'm interested in. Let's just see what happens. And that's pretty much all I have for you on the Aussie dollar. Other than that, I just got to sit and wait it out. Okay, let's move it along and let's have a look at the Euro USD. Okay, this is an example of a really nice break, by the way. That candle there is would be considered good enough because it took out the lows there as well. Okay, and if you have a look, if we drew that distance there and we redraw it over here, it's very, very similar height. Okay, so this is typically the way a breakout trade looks like, but it doesn't affect us. So let me get rid of it now. Let's see what else I got. Let me zoom out. Okay, this is a little bit tough. I'm trying to find an area where it might bounce off, but I don't have one. So the only logical thing here is let it find a bottom. Okay, let it. Now, some of you might think this bit here and this. I don't. I wouldn't consider that a level. So what I would rather do is I'm going to wait for it to find the bottom, pull up. When it does pull up, let's see what it can provide for me, and then I would be looking to continue with the momentum and in the same direction. That's the trade that I would be interested in. All right, so let it find its bottom, wait for it to pull up. Once it pulls up, look for some price action and then hit it to continue in the direction that it's coming, that it's going already. All right, that's the Euro USD. Let's have a look at the US yen. Let's zoom out a bit. Okay, all those levels that I had on my chart, those lines, none of them held. So let's just get rid of them all. Let me zoom out again. Let's have another look. Okay, you can see what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to catch this movement. Have I done enough? I think I've got it. Okay. All right, so what I've done is I'm looking at this channel. Got one, two touches at the top, and down the bottom I've got two touches. So a natural trade would be if we get to that level there, and then from there, that would be the first decent attempt at this particular channel. Let me see if I can see anything else. Let me zoom in a bit more so I can see it better. Paul, is your comment related to the US yen? Okay. So I think Paul's drawing our attention to this. It's very steep. Let me just zoom out of it a little bit. Let me just go to a 4 hour. Let's see how it looks on a 4 hour. Okay, so it would, if you wanted to trade this, essentially, I think there's enough room before you run into trouble. Okay, so if you wanted to trade this, then essentially what we need to happen, whether we have the line or not, we could still trade it as, well, this would be a triple touch, but we would look for an inside candle situation, which I think we've got one right now. However, we need to wait for the current one to finish, and if it should finish the way it is, well, then that would be a valid trade in the upward direction. And I believe there would be enough room left in that for you to easily get to your top line. Does that make sense to everybody? Let me zoom out. Okay, so that's our US yen. If this trade here from there to there would be a little bit higher risk, this one here like that would be my bread and butter type trade. This is the one that I would be looking for more. Okay, but you could possibly get both if you get the setups. Okay, Dennis, I will look at your question in a moment. Okay, once I get through, I'll come back to that one. All right, GBP USD. Okay, I had this one as a chart of the day last week. What I was trying to catch was I was trying to catch a trade of this level to go up there where a level has acted as resistance and then possibly could act as support. It didn't. It went through it. So we didn't trigger, so we didn't hurt us. Nothing major happened there. Now let's see if I can. It's just been doom and gloom for the pound, and this week being Super Thursday. Let's see if that doom and gloom will continue or if we'll get a bit of a correction. Now, bear in mind, we already had a move of around about nearly 800 plus pips. The most logical trade here would be to wait for some kind of a pullback. Once it comes, then to hit it to continue in the direction that it is going. Okay, that is the most logical trade that we can see on the GBP. There is nothing else available for us on that one. All right, so let's leave it at that and let's move along. Let's have a look at gold. Okay, we've breached the bottom line. Now notice with these ones only the wicks went through, but this one we got bodies that went through, so that pretty much for me means, let me get rid of that line now, it's no longer valid. So what really stands out now is, should we produce the candle pattern right there, a candle reversal pattern there that is ready to go into this direction. Okay, so that trade stands out. Let me see if anything else. Okay, I want to do something here. I just want to add this line. I just get the feeling it's going to come into play. So I'm just going to leave it there. And there'll be what I'm going to be looking for is when we get towards here to go in that direction there. Okay, but before that happens, we could have an opportunity, as I've already said, to hit something there and hit it there, and then if it comes to here, then we can hit it back. All right, so sometimes we're seeing two trades ahead of what's actually taken place, and it can help us set up. So this would obviously be the first one if it works out in sequence, and this would be the second one. Okay, let's have a look at the US CAD. All right, the channel that I've got on my chart still stands. Okay, that still stands. I think today this was the chart of the day, and I think what I highlighted was this area here. I highlighted an area where the market had shot off a few times, and the question was, can it do it again? So the channel still stands. Okay, so if we don't get any price action here and this continues to go, well then obviously this is the first trade that I would be looking for the highest probability one. Okay, but we're not there yet. So if we get something on this gray area, which I've highlighted now, then we could possibly have a setup there as well. So at the moment, if the little green one stays as an inside candle, okay, then we would be set, ready to go. And then tomorrow we could actually hit it into this direction as such, provided that we break the low. Does everybody know what I mean by that? So if it remains exactly, these two candles remain exactly the same, tomorrow we put a pending order at the low of the green one, and if we break it, well then we're in. If we break the top, then we cancel out. Alright, so that one's pretty straightforward. We'll leave the channel lines in it, and we'll leave that area that I've highlighted. Let's have a look at oil. Oh, okay. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Alright, so obviously you can see that I had this line. I think I drew this line in last week, and at the time, let me go back 5 candles, 3, 4, 5 there. This may not be a turning point. For it to be a turning point, we really want to see it pull back. So what may have to happen here is we may have to readjust this line. Okay, the bottom line is really solid, very, very good. But the top line, we kind of still don't know if that is the actual spot for the line. Do we have to grab this line and move it a little bit, and it may become an actual channel, whatever? I've got it here at the moment. I'm just going to leave it just so that it can guide me as to what I was thinking. But essentially, I don't have a single trade over here. The only trade that may have been on the cards would have been this one. This happened Friday, Thursday. So this would have been triggered on Thursday. This would have been, if you thought that this line was correct, then this would have been aggressive. However, like I've just said, that line, I only just drew it in there just to see if it actually ended up being the turning point or not. So I guess this would have been the trade in that direction there. I didn't see that. So maybe that line threw me off and I wasn't looking for it. In any case, I'll leave the line there now and let's see where it ends up. And we may have to readjust again. But at the moment, there's nothing on for oil. Let me just zoom right out, see if there's another high there somewhere. No, there isn't. There's nothing. So let's just leave this one. Let it play out a few more candles and we might have a better indication as to where it goes. All right, let's have a look at the Aussie 200. Okay. The stock market has recovered significantly over the last 2 weeks. We can see this 2-3 weeks, this nice run over there after that really deep fall that we had in this direction. Now, that line that I had drawn, we can see over there that we didn't get any setup, so we never got the opportunity to short off that. So let me now delete it. Okay. The next obvious opportunity is going to be if we attempt to do a double top. So if anything happens up there, making this a double top and see if we can get an opportunity to trade off that. Now again, for anybody which is new, I don't just trade off the levels. I still need the candle pattern confirmation there that it is in fact a reversal before I pull any trade off there. So the same would apply to this particular one there. So let me draw that in there. Someone's making a comment that there is 8 consecutive days in one direction. Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so well, we're too late for that one, unfortunately, Paul. But you are correct. If we had seen that, and probably this is the movement that you're looking for when we're approaching that type of trade. Again, the 8 consecutive statistical method, it was originally for only the Euro USD. That's when the statistics and the numbers were done. But I've seen that it can work quite well for something that gets heavily traded like a major. I've never done it on an index, but nevertheless, you can see here that that candle would have been the movement that you're looking for. Unfortunately for us, it's too late, so it's not applicable at this particular point in time right now. All right, so for ASX 200, let's see what happens when we approach the top here, and let's see if we can pull off a trade that will allow us to short the Aussie 200. Last but not least, Kiwi USD. You can see we drew here. We've had nice breaking candles there, and it just kept on going. Look, the natural thing to happen here will be to pull back, find it again, and continue again with that exact same type of trade. Let me just zoom out. Let me see if there's anything better. Okay, there's nothing really better on the cards. What I'll do is I can get rid of these lines now. They're no longer relevant to us. But what we're looking for is that kind of pullback and then continuation in this direction. Okay. All right, type your questions in. I'll answer some of those questions that got pasted in as I was going through that. Let me just do a quick recap and I'll answer all the questions. Aussie US dollar. I've just drawn that top line just to check to see if we get back up to that level. But initially, we're looking for some kind of a pullback and then continuation with the trend. Euro USD, exactly the same story. Pullback, continuation with the trend. It seems everything is pro US dollar at the moment, so all the counterparty currencies to the US pairs are suffering. What do we have here? US yen. We could trigger a trade tomorrow, inside candle there to continue in this direction, and then keep the channel on there to see what happens up here so that we can get an opportunity to go back. GBP USD. We need to wait for it to find the bottom and pull back before any action can be taken. Gold is similar. We're looking for a pullback and then aiming towards that bottom line that I've just drawn. US CAD, we are at a level right now. If we get an inside candle situation right at this level, we can short. As I explained this morning in the chart of the day, this is the chart of the day. WTI. Let's wait and see where this goes and readjust that line as it happens. Aussie 200, the double top is the most probable next setup to show itself. So let's wait and see if it turns up. And lastly, the Kiwi dollar, we're waiting for a pullback and then hit it on continuation in the trend. All right, if you just give me one moment, let me just read a couple of these questions and I'll answer them for you. Okay, I've got a question on divergence. The question is, do I look for divergence only on breakout patterns, or can I do it in normal trend type trading? The answer is I can look for it anywhere it comes up. You've given me an example of the Aussie yen. Let me pull that chart up so I can see what you're looking at. Aussie yen. And you mentioned a 4-hour chart, so let me go to the 4-hour chart. Let me add my awesome oscillator. This is the one that I like the most when I do this. Let me just continue reading the question one moment. Okay, I really can't, maybe a little tiny bit. Give me one moment. Let me just change my profile for 1 second. There's ever the slightest bit of divergence on this chart. So let me go back to what I had. And I'll just explain. Okay, so let me just get rid of one moment. Okay, for those of you who don't know divergence, essentially it's, let me just find an example. There's a couple of examples. Let me try and find a good example. Give me one moment and I'll explain it properly so that everybody's on the right page. Okay, the best example that I can see is right over here. So what I'm going to try and do is, if you look at the tops of my indicator, if we join them up, you can see that there's a line that's very flat across there. Now, if I draw this, if I go up to my chart, the same position, you notice that there is essentially the price is going in one direction and the other one is going in the other direction. In other words, they're not going together, they're going away from each other. This is divergence, and usually when we get that, what we can, the natural occurrence that can happen, let me just get rid of some of these so that we don't get confused. When we get that divergence, at that point, we can see that the market corrects itself to come back towards each other. Okay, so this, at that particular point here, there was a lot of divergence, and this could have been a trade that you could have taken as such. Now, to answer the question whether I look for it as a breaking out or inside a trend, if I found it at this point, for example, and it was in that direction, well, then that would be okay as well, and you can see that that's with the trend. All right, so looking at the current situation right now, the bottom here and the bottom there, it's very flat, okay, but the bottom here and the bottom there is still, it's not exaggerated. It's not an exaggerated amount of divergence. So I would say that is not a great, it's not enough for me to justify a trade just based off that. Okay, usually what I like, if I was looking for divergence, I would like it to occur at, let's go back and let me just look for a bit of divergence on some of the charts that we already had up. Let me just pull this one back to the Aussie dollar. let me see the cases where it's more obvious than not. Okay, there's an area here. If I look at the bottom here and I look at this bottom there, that is clearly going upwards. But if I look at the bottom here and I look at the bottom there, it's clearly going downwards. All right, so there was a high probability that at this particular point there, the market was going to go in that direction. Now, on top of that, if I was doing some pattern trading and I had a line there of support where that was the third touch was occurring at the same time where I was showing a lot of divergence, it would have given me so for example, in that case, I may have had two reasons to take the trade. Normally I like two reasons to take the trade. One is the supporting line, for example, and the second reason is what is my price action confirmation. All right, in this particular case I had divergence confirmation and my support line, so maybe I didn't need the price action, but if I had all three, then it's even a nicer feeling. Okay, all right, does that make sense to everybody? Any other questions? No, nothing else today? Okay, well, if nothing else today, let's call it a wrap. If you do get any questions throughout the week, guys, just email me. As always, send me a screenshot of your chart so that I can see what's happening. Other than that, I hope you all have a great trading week. Keep watching the daily call. Oh, just one announcement before I do leave. There will be no daily call on Thursday and Friday this week. So only expect it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I am going away, so I will not be available on Thursday, Friday to do the daily call. Okay. Question on the trading challenge. I've just been extremely busy at this particular point in time. I will do it. I promise that it'll be within probably the next 3 weeks. Okay, guys. Just give me a bit of time. It's just I've just got so much on my plate at the moment that I haven't been able to organize it. All right, guys, have a great trading week. I'll speak to you on the daily call for the next 2 days, and then we'll speak again next week. Other than that, bye for now.